before we get started, I want to thank the Reusable Packaging Association for having us here. It's just been great over the last 5 years that I've been at Pack Expo, watching this whole process grow and seeing people become more interested, not only in the technologies, but the standards around the technologies. So really excited about that. And we have a fantastic panel here. And a lot of the people on this stage have helped create these fantastic technologies that really help with data collection and the identification of this reusable transport packaging. So they're going to be able to really provide today a lot of insights into the standards, the technology, give some useful case studies around successful implementations involving standards, also some of the challenges that might come with all of that, as well as looking into the future of the technologies and standards industry. So without further ado, I'm Mike Ellen. I'm the Business Development Director of AIM. AIM's an industry association for automatic identification technologies like barcoding and RFID. We help educate and help create and promote standards around those technologies. Jason, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Jason Brownell, Director of Engineering at a company called Polyfuse Graphics Corporation. And we provide to the industry, to the reusable packaging space, a polymer-based labeling system. So rather than adhering to materials, it's actually based out of polymers and fusing into the surface of it.
Hi, I'm Rob Franzo. I'm with Qualcomm Technologies. I'm the Retail Logistics Solution Architect in the Connected Smart Systems business unit. And my role is to look at how to bring to the industry technology to connect intelligent assets. And we do that based upon industry standards and proprietary technology that we partner with different companies. Previously, I was with Zebra Technologies and led the activity to migrate from Microsoft OMAP technology to a Snapdragon Android technology for all the industrial handhelds. And one of the things that I'm very focused on is how to democratize RFID reader technology to bring down the cost of acquiring symbology. And then also I chair the technology working group for the Reusable Packaging Association. And so this actually, Mike, thanks for sponsoring this panel or hosting this panel. This is part of the TWG remit, if you will, for the Reusable Packaging Association.
Hi, my name is Colin Black. I am with Metalcraft. We are a tag and label manufacturer. We produce a variety of different asset tracking tags, which includes RFID tags. We also have an RFID inlay manufacturing facility as well that produces custom RFID inlays for your whatever your solution is. And I'll touch a little bit about custom inlays. A little bit about myself. I was the RFID engineer for Metalcraft for about 5 years. And I guess they finally let me leave the four gray walls of manufacturing. It was pretty bland, but I like this scenery a little bit better than that. So thanks.
Great. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, everyone. So let's get things started. What do you think is the role of technology standards in the context of reusable transport packaging? And Rob, I'll start with you since IoT begins with Qualcomm. We'll begin with you.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so the role of standards is very important. It allows for the exchange, interoperability, the scaling of systems to bring down the cost, to bring up the efficiency, the effectiveness of that. And the RAIN RFID standard, GS1 with symbology 2D, it's very important, right? Because when you have standards, you have interoperability, that does one thing, and that provides an experience which is consistent and meets the quality expectations. So, oftentimes people say it's very hard, and it is. It's hard to do standards. There's compromise in standards, so you're not necessarily always going to get the best thing, but what you're going to benefit by is the collaboration of bringing that standard together. You're going to get people with different perspectives contributing to it that makes it the best it can be for a given application.
Great. Thank you. Jason?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I sit and look at the Reusable Packaging Association, and immediately what comes to my mind when talking about standards is to create that circular economy, where like 4 words come to mind. I've got reusability, sustainability, recyclability, at the end of it. I mean, because when we look at these reusable packaging type containers, sometimes in the case of like polymers like polyethylene, they may have a 10-year life cycle, and then to be ground up, recycled, and then go back into the supply chain. So I think the standards help with that for sure.
Great. Colin?
So especially with RFID standards and tags, your solution is only as good as the data that you're putting into it. So, I mean, we already mentioned the GS1 standards. That organization has done a fantastic job really bringing RFID to kind of the next step that it needs to be standard in a lot of different supply chain tracking applications. The other big thing that the RFID industry is really moving forward is, luckily, we're no longer at the point where we need to prove that RFID technology works. Now it's just a matter of how is RFID technology going to work for you in your system. The thing with that is it's with RFID tags, the data standards are important with the structure, but also the performance standards of ensuring that when you do tag a product with RFID, it's going to work in your system every single time. So I'll touch a little bit more about other standards with performance, but that's a good starting place.
And let me just one other thing. Mike said that Qualcomm IoT. I'm going to define IoT for today's discussion as interoperability testing. Okay, because there's no internet in things. It's right there. It's really a gateway that does that translation from a machine to machine connectivity. RAIN RFID, the standard UHF. And then what Polyfuse is doing in terms of embedding and integrating that technology into, so it's got high reliability, high availability, but it's really about interoperability testing. And that's one of the challenges that industries always face is how do they scale? How did they demonstrate, like Bluetooth SIG, Wi-Fi Alliance, RAIN RFID, that's all about assurance of interoperability and that experience to be consistent. And that's what, they do. They go after really hard problems and demonstrate performance.
And one of my favorite questions, especially when I go to trade shows, is, hey, I'm looking for an RFID solution. Well, implementing a successful RFID solution shouldn't be your goal. It's what is the RFID solution going to allow you to do? Because RFID is just a data carrier, just like a barcode. It's housing data, but instead of being within the barcode, it's automated through chip where you're, again, no longer needing a scanner in line of sight. You use RF technology. So understanding what are you trying to achieve with RFID technology, that's a pivotal thing to understand when you're looking to implement something.
Right. Well, I think standards also help to set that goal or that benchmark, because otherwise it's just, open to different people's interpretations. So I think it's important to have that benchmark, especially when you're looking at circular economy and things like that.
Great. Thank you, guys. So you've all implemented technology. So let's talk about a successful technology implementation where the use of standards really helped get it over the top in terms of the performance. And Colin, I'll start with you.
Sure. So I have two examples to share today. One is we helped implement an RFID solution for one of the largest whiskey distillers here in the U.S., as well as a large pallet and crate manufacturer here in the U.S. And the buzzword I'm going to say was everything was working fantastic, and then COVID. And it's like, well, what did COVID bring to the surface that allowed us to understand the issues with the solution that we had implemented? One key I want to mention is this was before Metalcraft decided to open its own inlay manufacturing facility. And the reasons we ended up doing so was because of what happened to these two solutions. So I'll talk about the whiskey distiller first. First, they're tagging every single barrel with an RFID tag. They chose what I'll call a standard or a stock inlay from one of the many inlay manufacturers around the world. They set up their reader portals. They set up everything. They were getting a yield or an accuracy in their readings of 99.97%. So that's pretty dang good, I would say, for RFID technology. So everything was working great until, again, chip shortage, supply chain issues, and then what? All of a sudden they're like, "What do you mean we can't get that inlay? That inlay is what our whole system is set up to optimize for." Well, they're like, "We can't get you that inlay, but we can get you this inlay." And if you're looking at data sheets, you're like, "Okay, this one gets 15 feet on plastic, or in this case, wood. This one gets 15 feet on wood. We're good. Everything will be fine." Upon doing that transition, they went from 99.97 down to 82%. Why is that? Well, pointing out important fact number one, read range is not everything when it comes to inlay manufacturing. So we understood that the hard way. And what we did, turns out inlay A had a sensitivity, and I'm going to use a couple technical terms, but I'll explain what this means. Inlay A had a sensitivity around a negative 40 dB, whereas inlay B had a sensitivity of negative 50 dB. That's a 10 dB difference, which again is technology for its inlay A was 100 times more sensitive than inlay B, meaning every time these barrels were rolling past the readers, it wasn't picking up inlay B fast enough, which is why they saw such a loss in performance. Well, the solution is, okay, we can switch to another inlay that's more sensitive. Well, now the read range is much greater. Now you're picking up tags all the way across the warehouse. So the answer, go to the reader manufacturer, have them fine-tune the readers. You got to love that answer because it's like you can't keep changing your reader hardware. So what's the solution? So I'll kind of end this by saying when we launched Inlay Innovation, we made sure that A, if you have a solution, we will match the performance exactly of the inlay that you've made. And the other benefit of that in the supply chain is when, say, chip A is no longer available, we can make the modifications to allow chip B. We match the antenna impedance, we match everything so that it fits perfectly into your supply chain. So no reader hardware has to be adjusted, and everything is going to be flawlessly working in your system with that change. That is the power of custom RFID inlay, custom RFID designing.
Great. Jason, do you want to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. The one that comes to mind that's specific to polyethylene, polypropylene is a major medical waste supplier, major medical waste containers. That the big challenge there was the low surface energy materials of polyethylene and polypropylene. Nothing really wants to stick well to it long term from an adhesive standpoint, and which I mentioned in the introduction. We're a polymer company. And so the challenge was be able to take a medical waste container and to be able to have the labeling, the barcoding, to be able to survive the wash cycles and then go back out for a return trip. And again, that was a technology that we could bring to them that would solve that problem of adhesive technologies, making it through the wash cycle. So that was a huge challenge that we were able to help overcome.
Great. And Rob?
Yeah, I'll frame this in this way. As it pertains to RFID integration and the cost of readers, and my goodness, what Colin laid out about the 50 dB versus 40 dB, that is 100 times. That's in a, by the way, sorry, I just had to geek on this a little bit, but that's a very, we're talking neg 20, neg 30 usually. I'm sorry for the term, neg is how engineers talk. Neg 40 to neg 50. This guy could take us to Mars if we wanted to, okay? But we don't want to go there. But I digress, come back a little bit. Interoperability or standards in the testing of compliance to key performance indicators like sensitivity, reader sensitivity. So for me, I apologize, guys. I've been in this game for 45 years, bringing new technology to market, dealing with standards, standardization. I was at Bell Laboratories when they deregulated, and people associated deregulation with destandardization, and we broke the world. We broke the world in communications, right? Because you think about what happened with cellular standards. We went to how many? So I'm going to just take a little bit, just a minute. We had so many cellular standards. in the 80s, right? In the 90s. And then there was LTE, 3GPP, standards body that became a pan world standard. And that is why we can interoperate and talk to each other on our cell phones today without any issues. So we can share all that information. So standardization at the transport layer, at the way that the data carrier, right, RFID symbology, that's the information. But now how is it encoded and transmitted? That's where you need to have that interoperability and assurance. That's where the Wi-Fi Alliance, 3GPP, RAIN Alliance, AIM, IEEE, ETSI, all these standards bodies that we work with, that we come together as companies and contribute to. And as it pertains to RFID and symbology and what GS1 is doing, what AIM is doing to help bring the use cases, and what our RPA is doing to bring the right people together to collaborate to say, let's figure out how we're going to standardize to scale the industry so that, you know, these debates about return on investment, no, it's value. It's a return on your operational value. How are you going to augment your operation to get the insights and the visibility to allow you to provide a better service to your customer, because it's about operational efficiency, customer experience, and your business model. That's what it comes down to. And good standards that are purposely built and collaborated by the industry gets you there. And for RPA, and the reason the technology working group is formed is specifically to look at how do we scale reusable packaging ecosystem and to solve the world's problem of reducing loss in food, reducing theft, reducing counterfeit, all those things that we can solve. And it's technology, but it's how it's applied. So maybe that's a little bit far aside, but you know, the standards take time to get right, and getting there is worth the time. That's all I'll say. A lot said, but it's what it really comes down to. It's worth the time.
Great, thank you. I think that was really insightful. So Jason, you talked about this a little bit ago, but can you share your learnings dealing with technologies that include branding? So things like adhesion, like you'd mentioned earlier, or materials selected that play an important role when put onto that reusable transport packaging.
Yeah, and I did touch on that earlier. You know, there's multiple challenges. I look around at the different suppliers here to the industry, to the space. A lot of polyethylene, a lot of polypropylene. Some major challenges with adhesion relate specifically to low surface energy material. In fact, low surface energy material is when you're taking readings of it, one way to test it is dynes per centimeter. And if you look at polyethylene, polypropylene, they're coming in at around 30 dynes per centimeter. Products like Teflon, for example, that we coat our cookware with so that nothing sticks to it, that's coming in at about 18 dynes per centimeter. Again, so these are materials that adhesive technologies have challenges with. And you also have the expansion and contraction. As these materials get hot and cold, they're expanding and contracting. I often say that, you know, it's similar to taking an adhesive type bandage and putting it over your knuckle. It's fine as long as you keep everything flat, but as soon as you start flexing it, it wants to start to loosen up. And then, of course, if you add moisture in the case of, you know, washing and things like that in reusable packaging, that can cause delamination. Then, is there any sort of residue that's maybe left behind that could be a challenge to have to deal with? And then lastly, you see a lot of outgassing in these type of materials, you know, from blooming agents, surfactants, things like that. So when you take an adhesive technology, you can have outgassing causing bubbles and things wanting to delaminate from that area. So from a material selection standpoint, they're you know, the polyolefin family of plastic, fantastic family, but it certainly has its challenges, and that's one of the solutions we bring to the industry, including a RFID solution that actually can fuse into the surfaces as well. So,
Great. Colin, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about materials, and I mean, obviously from the Polyfuse standpoint, I mean, they're doing a lot of cool things with the durability of being able to infuse that graphic into their materials. Um, if I had to go into an example again, promoting the use of customization, whenever you're looking at an entire supply chain process for whatever the returnable uh, project that you're doing, every step of that project is customized to be as optimal and efficient as possible. So my question is, why would you stick a generic inlay that was made to go on a variety of surfaces into this very custom process? And another example is back to the whiskey, the distiller that I mentioned. They put an inlay on there that was made that they could benchmark the performance on wood. But when you stick 50 gallons of whiskey behind this barrel, that's going to detune the heck out of that RFID tag. And now all of a sudden you have a brand new application, a brand new opportunity with this RFID tag. So ensuring that you are designing a tag that's going to be specifically fit for that application long term is going to help set you up for success. And
No, I was just going to say you're absolutely right. And I look at us as a polymer company and not as specialists in RFID, which is why we have to partner with people that understand antenna design and what type of chip to be used. So yeah, no, I totally agree with what you're saying. Not to have just a generic format, because there are some customized applications depending on what materials are being transported.
Rob, do you have anything to add? Nope.
I'm not. When my boss, when my current boss, he said you can do anything but material science, and I said, yeah, I'm not qualified to do it anyway.
Great. So as you know, the technology's just advancing rapidly. What challenges do companies face maintaining compatibility and consistency across various labeling and data capture solutions for reusable transport packaging? And Rob, I'm going to make you talk.
Read our white paper. But yeah, there's so much opportunity for us as an industry in this ecosystem to work together to bring diversity of perspective. You can kind of get a sense. I don't think any of the companies up here compete against each other, but we're on a panel together because we have a common mission, which is to enable something bigger than each of our individual companies can achieve. It's a team. IoT is a team sport. In interoperability testing and machine-to-machine RF symbology, let's face it, just real quick. Identification and authentication and then operational insights, like Colin was talking about with the whiskey barrels. Did you get a cut of those whiskey barrels? Maybe. Okay. I have to come over to Mason City, Iowa. It's a field trip. So anyway, the point is that we, as far as RPA and integrating technology and standards, RPA is an alliance. It's not a standards body. But by surveying the standards and surveying the use cases and documenting that and then bringing together within our forum the experts that can talk about where the friction is for those use cases and where the gaps are in the standards, how can we recommend extensions to the standards bodies to address those gaps? So that's kind of, and as we mature as an industry, adopting, embedding, making connected intelligent assets and all the benefits of that, and it's technology agnostic. It's fit for purpose. Wait, fit for design, fit for purpose. Quality is fit for purpose, right? Quality should always be, what am I trying to achieve? What is the purpose? And then how do I match what I have in my quiver, my toolbox, to solve that problem, right? So it's a little that you can restate the question. Maybe I got it right. Maybe I didn't. Well, you wanted to
No,
comment.
that was good. That was good.
Okay.
Colin, do you have anything to add?
I mean, I've spoken a little bit about compatibility. Obviously, if you're trying to retrofit a system with a new inlay, you got the compatibility of matching performance. One of the catches that is starting to really become, I guess, a trend in the RFID space is this chip is backwards compatible with this chip, meaning you can, the same antenna, you can put this new chip on it and it's still going to work. Well, yes, that's true. And a big part of that is just for inlay manufacturers, I'll kind of let you in on a secret in terms of inlay manufacturing. To be most efficient when it comes to inlay manufacturing, if you could run one antenna with one type of chip all day long, you could pump out billions of tags and you could do very, very well. It's the constant changeover for a different antenna, different chip. So when they talk about backwards compatibility with the chip, that means, yes, that size chip with the pads on that chip can bond to the same antenna. But I'm here to warn you, the performance will change with that. Yes, if you're putting this in a retail environment on a pair of jeans, does it really matter whether you're going to get 25 feet versus 30 or sensitivity of this versus sensitivity of that? Probably not. But in terms of your reusable packaging, your returnable transit item, that type of compatibility is extremely vital that you match that performance. So with a custom inlay and a custom antenna, just being able to change that chip whenever the technology is changing, especially if chip manufacturers inevitably will sunset some of the older chip technologies. And if you have a legacy RFID inlay in your process, you're going to have to adapt to the newer chip technologies, which means you're going to have to modify your inlay to match the performance. And that's where custom inlays from, for instance, like Inlay Innovation can be very beneficial.
Great. Jason?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I would like to bring up in this forum is to keep up with standards and to keep up with the testing of those materials. I think it's very important to do the testing on production intent products. I've seen some things where maybe testing is done on metals or on glass when maybe the ultimate performance is going to be on plastic. So I think that's going to be one challenge to the industry, is making sure that the testing and keeping up with those standards is being done on production intent product. So that was one thing I'd like to point out.
I can add one more thing too with benchmarking performance. So the Auburn RFID lab, they've done a heck of a job benchmarking performance for specific applications, meaning they're certifying specific RFID inlays for certain applications. Specifically, I mean, the latest is with the RFID mandate in the retail space, such as Walmart. They have their whole playbook all about the specific departments where these RFID tags are going in. A lot of people are looking to Auburn as kind of a hurdle to selling their product into the RFID space. But we talk about the importance of standards, and Auburn is really doing a great job to ensure that when these RFID tags get into these applications and into these spaces, that they are going to work. Because the worst thing, especially for the RFID space, is for a bunch of RFID tags to get out in the field and then none of them work. And people are seeing 75% yields or even worse. And then everyone will abandon the technology because it's not good enough. So again, my hat's off to Auburn RFID for kind of sticking their neck out, really doing their due diligence to ensure good performing products are getting into the right applications.
Yeah, and let me just thank you for Colin for bringing up Auburn. One of the things we have to do as an industry is figure out how to scale Auburn, right? How to bring it into AIM or bring it into some third party, somewhere where we can democratize that interoperability testing, that compliance testing. Because remember what I said, 3GPP. Wi-Fi Alliance, Bluetooth SIG. How many of you would go out and buy a Wi-Fi system for your home that doesn't have a WFA sticker on it? Nobody should put their hands up, right? Because that's the point. And so there should be a way for Colin and Metalcraft and for Polyfuse to be able to take their solution to an interoperability testing lab, a third-party lab, independent, and pay for a certification mark. And so we've got to deal with that, probably sooner than later, because in all my experience through the modem wars, through the wireless wars, through satellite radio wars, which if you want to know what I did there, just look at my resume. But the point is, interoperability and scale is important. And if you don't get it right, you're going to have frustrated customers, you're going to have disappointment, you're going to have quality issues, you're not going to meet the fitness for use.
Great. So before we go to the audience Q&A, just one last question, talking kind of into the future and what you think are the most promising labeling and data capture technologies for reusable transport packaging, and how can standards still be utilized for these new technologies? Jason.
Yeah, no, I think it's great, and you bring up a great point, Rob. To be able to have these standards in place, and I mentioned before, being able to jointly come together to have that benchmark as an industry so that it's not open to interpretation. So no, and like you were saying, to mention it with Auburn. So I think that's important. And be able to keep up with those standards as the technology changes. I mean, speed is going to be an important part of this. Like you say, sooner rather than later, but it's going to be constant.
Yeah, and Jason, thank you. And as we look into the future, so for RFID, RAIN RFID in particular, it's about democratizing the readers. It's about so how many of you have a smartphone? Everybody got a smartphone here? Don't put your hands up, we all know. How many of you know that you have an NFC reader in your smartphone? Everybody know that, right? Right? What if you had an RFID reader in there? Would that change maybe the way you interact with things? Would that change your experience? Yeah, it would. So watch this space.
I guess my closing comments would just be kind of about the competing technologies out there, and I'll put competing in quotation marks because there's so many different kinds of technology out there that they do more for each other than they do against each other. Like one of the biggest hurdles in like the access control space with RFID is vision going to take over for RFID? And that you can look at it that way, but again, vision paired with RFID does more for a complete solution than trying to put the two against each other. And especially when we start looking at like AI, because again, that's the latest technology. People are saying AI is going to take jobs. It's not going to take jobs. It's going to force people to think and problem solve differently than just working in a mundane task. It's forcing them to use the human cognitive thinking part of our brain as opposed to just doing, again, the tedious labor. So it's not going to take over. It's not going to compete. It's going to open up new opportunities.
Great. Well, thank you guys for your insights. We're not done yet, though. We have our audience Q&A now. So if anyone has any questions, please raise your hands.
Great job on the session here. Quick question. I know, Colin, you'd commented about some of the mandates that are out there. Is that what we need, or is industry ready to go without a mandate?
That's a good question. So for everyone, he asked, are mandates the way to go? Do we need to move forward with mandates, or can we kind of continue to push forward without? Again, I think that's a discussion, and we talked about some of the certifications that are happening that are helping the industry. I think it has to be a group effort. Everyone has to come together for the sake of moving technology forward. It can't just be like, we need to mandate this as a business model so we can make money. It has to be, does this mandate promote the successful use of the technology? And if so, how do we globalize that? And not only that, but how can every company participate in that equally without, throwing their money at it and saying, hey, it's kind of a pay to play sort of mandate type of thing. So I think those are kind of the two key areas that's going to allow that to grow technology versus hinder it.
Yeah, and as far as the FDA, Drug Supply Chain Security Act, and the Food Safety Modernization Act, as in North America, those mandates, right? Those requirements are good. They are good. They are not prescriptive. They talk about what you need to measure, how you need to trace it. So they establish a framework, and GS1 happens to be doing some good work in that area by ways of bringing people together to talk about how to go about using standards to implement, right? So generally, like I talked about the Bell Labs thing, right? Deregulatory, okay, break up the baby bells, but then they came back together as Verizon and AT&T. And Colbert did a great job on predicting that anyway. But the economists had predicted that. I know, okay, but the point I'm making here is that regulation is good because it's about providing for safety and security, and it's helping to, motivate people to get there, to do what is necessary. So I think mandates are good. I'm a technology guy, and maybe I'm a rebel, but you also have to be compliant to make things work. Right? And that's why we're together as the RPA, by the way, right? Because it's an alliance.
Any other questions? Just raise your hand.
Can we talk about generative AI?
All right. Last chance for questions. I'll just give one more second. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. Hope you took a lot from this session. Todd Hoff there in the back is actually holding up a QR code, and that's for the RPA Retail Reusables white paper. It's a fantastic white paper that, Rob, I know you were a big part of creating and updating. So if you scan that QR code, you can get that downloaded, and it's a great read for your flight home. So please go and do that before you go here. Thanks again, everyone. And all of us will be here in this Reusable Packaging Association Pavilion the rest of the day. I'm in booth 8306. Colin's right next to me in booth 8305. And I've just seen you guys flying all around here. So I'm sure you can catch them if you're interested in asking them more questions. So thanks again, everyone.